So for this week's Sandbox episode, we're excited to talk to somebody who, honestly, this conversation is a long time coming, way overdue. But we're talking to photographer and paper illustrator at Focus Lab and host of the Manual Focus podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome our very, very favorite person, Alicia Colon, to the show.
Yeah.
Yay! Thank you guys so much for having me.
Oh, it's been way too long. Like Andrew
Can I
said.
tell you the first time that I met you now?
Yes.
Or like my first memory of you. It was Creative South. It was 2 years ago, and it was in the lobby.
You were wearing that blue blazer that you love so much.
It was with the shoulder pads. It was the lobby of the Marriott, and the forefathers, whatever, they had those like crazy sports coats, and they were like standing out there, and you went and took their picture. So you had three people like holding up iPhones with their lights turned on, and then you like jumped up on a chair or something and snapped the photo. The photo turned out amazing, but that is my first memory of you, was watching you snap that picture.
Oh, that is exciting. I love that photo. Because that was such a quintessential time for them, because they never literally have ever met. They worked together for all these years. And so kind of being able to take that, like maiden voyage portrait of them was super exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean...
Plus, it turned out killer, because the lighting is not exactly ideal in that environment. And then if you went and if you go look at the photo, and I'll put it in the show notes so people can see it, it looks like you're like in a studio or something. Like it's better than any photo I've ever taken.
Or will ever
I realize that isn't a good reference point to say that comment.
That bar is real low.
But anyway.
But I'll take it.
Patrick only takes photos on live photo, and they're always in motion. He's always just doing this as he takes it. Like, are you on a trampoline when you're taking that? It looks like you're in the middle of your living room. Just stop moving and press the button.
That's amazing.
Right. So we've already diverted from the conversation, which I imagine will happen from time to time during this conversation, because you're so fun, and it's just going to happen. We need to embrace it, accept it, and move through it. But for everyone who doesn't know who you are, give them a quick Wikipedia page about who you are and what you do.
Okay, awesome. So I am a photographer and paper illustrator, which pretty much means that I create things out of paper. And then I shoot them. I mean, it pretty breaks down like that. I'm a mother of 3. And do you guys see that? My light's like flashing.
Yeah.
It is. Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. I don't know what's happening. Poltergeist. Okay, anyway. So mother of 3, and I am a wife of like 14 odd years. So that's me. I started as a designer though. So I kind of like moved over.
Sure.
Yeah, there's so many different things to talk about with you, and I'm trying to figure out, at least from my perspective, what the best in route is. But I'll go back to the first time that we interacted with you. It was at Creative South. This is my experience, and you were so welcoming. So this is the first year that we were doing anything with the podcast, right? This is the first event we had ever been invited to. First time, no one had heard of us at this point, because this was like year one. On the heels of year one. So no one even really knew who we were. And you were so welcoming, so open, so friendly, and so energetic that you kind of set the stage for that event. But not only that event, but for set the expectation of how we would expect people to interact with us, because you were one of the very first people at an event that we interacted with.
It was at the VIP dinner, I think. It was.
Yeah,
you just sat down and said, "Hey, who are you? What do you do? Why are you here?" And it was like, "Oh, wait, we are people. We can talk to other people."
I really love that you guys see that as positive, because some people would be like, "Man, she's nosy."
Oh no, it's awesome.
I mean, I thought that.
See, I really appreciate that, Patrick. At least one of you guys are honest.
Well, here's the deal, though. Notice Patrick's first memory of you is 2 days after that.
I wasn't going to point that out. Thanks.
That was instantly what I thought of. I was like, she was one of the first people to talk to us at Creative South.
That idea is so normal to me and not out of place. It didn't even register.
Yeah.
Now, 3 people holding iPhones up with their lights on and someone standing on furniture to snap a photo, more memorable.
So let me cycle this back into the question then. Let's get this back on track, at least for a moment.
Okay.
Is that something that is ingrained in you, inherently in you, or is that something you've had to develop in your personality?
Oh, dude, that's definitely something I have developed. I suffer from like crippling anxiety. And so it's one of those things though. So like I've been in counseling situations for a really long time for me specifically, but then also have turned the tables and done that now for teenagers specifically for the past 4 years. And I mean, more than that, but extensively for the past 4 years. And one of the things that I'm learning is that I'm not alone. That like generally speaking in every social situation, like people will feel like they don't belong or they don't know what to say or whatever. And at that juncture, I'm like, well, if we all think that we suck at it, like I'll be the first person who at least like breaks the ice. And then at that point, I'll make that other person feel comfortable. So yeah, so it's definitely something I've developed.
And I can understand how some people might be intimidated by it, but I would say probably the bulk of the people, and I can speak for us because the three of us equal a bulk of people, that the icebreaker brings down the walls and allows you to experience people and be around people and not just be at an event, because an event by itself can be very intimidating.
Sure.
But a friendly face and somebody who's happy and bubbly and interested in you helps bring that into a comfort level, so you can actually be who you are and enjoy yourself.
Yeah, for sure. It's really easy for people to talk about themselves too. So that's the good news, is that if I go into that situation, I don't have to worry about what I'm going to say because it's all really asking about them.
Yeah.
So the pressure was on you guys.
I see. It's all a ploy.
So I want to jump into some of your work, and I've been saving this comment, but you're doing a lot of work with papercraft now.
Yes.
Or at least like the work that I'm seeing latest on your site and your Instagram and stuff like that. And but the way that, and you've always worked with light in a very in a way that's in the forefront. And so the work that I'm seeing now, some of the pieces trick me into believing it's like a 3D rendered object, and it's actually papercraft and light. So can you maybe do a better job explaining these pieces and like where this is coming from?
Yeah, totally. So I think it all comes from, gosh, I feel like there's so many different ways that I could answer that question. So I really like to do still life, and I really like to do like conceptual or abstract ideation around the art that I create, right? Like there's some people who are like paper illustrators, and they are like, here's a hamburger, or here's a donut made out of paper. You know what I mean? It's like the end product is the fact that it's made out of paper and it's donut, where it's like, I like to take the paper and I like to infuse a story within it using atmospheric elements. So sometimes I'll put fog in there. Sometimes I'll put, like I did something today that had like a bubble in it, like a legit, like blew it out of a wand thing, bubble. Nice. So I love, and there's like this aerosol spray. Luke, I know you're a photographer. I don't think you talk about that often.
I don't ever talk about it.
On the yeah. Okay. So everybody.
We shame him out of it. We don't want him talking about it.
Yeah. So I remember back to Creative South, Luke and I made this pact. Really, I made it to Luke and have failed that I would use a white card, and I still don't. So
come on. Okay, hold on. Before we get any farther, we had you were the connection, honestly, and this is real. You were the connection for me for Creative South because we connected as photographers, and it was like I was going for the podcast, but I was going to a design conference. So I was like, I'm not on the level with any of these people. Like, I can appreciate everything they do, but I don't do any of that. And then, like, one of the very first people I meet is you, and you're a photographer, and you were doing a lot of lifestyle stuff at that point, I think. Yeah. And it was just like, oh my gosh, this is my people. This is like I have met my people, and then we hit it off, and we did. We were just talking about work and process and different things. And like I think we talked a couple times throughout that year, and it was one of those like connections that really like pulled me into the community better than just the three of us going and being part of it. You know what I mean? It gave some individuality to that group. Yeah. And so thank you for that.
You're welcome.
But okay, go back to what Patrick was talking about.
Okay.
Go ahead.
All that said, use a white card, dang it.
You can do it.
Dag
You can
nabbit.
do it.
Okay, I believe in you. So anyway, so I love light. Whenever I was a lifestyle photographer, or whenever I started out, I always used light because I love to sculpt it, and so I like light being part of the narrative of what I'm doing. So because of that, I always try to choose atmospheric things that will capture the light. So I have this aerosol spray that's like fog, and you can spray it and it goes whoosh, and the light is captured a little bit better. But there is a lot of digital painting that happens, largely because my paper crafting skills, I suck at math. So I get it just as much as I need to in order to retouch it, because my retouching skills is way better than my paper engineering skills. So I think it's because it is this mix of real, but then also highly retouched. It has this 3D render feel.
Yeah, it's like hyper real is kind of the way that I would describe it. It's really good. So
Yes.
I follow you. I follow you on Instagram, but because of the or social media, whatever it is, I don't know if it's Instagram or Facebook, but because of the algorithms, I don't often see your stuff. Doesn't pop up on my stuff very regularly. But I'm I'm at your site right now, and I'm like, why haven't I seen this? Why haven't I seen this? Why haven't I seen this? The particular piece that I'm in love with is the Stay on the Ball piece that you did. I think for me, it's just these two legs in Converse high tops with the striped tube socks. And it's someone kind of balancing or rolling on a big red ball on a sidewalk. And for me, it's reminiscent of playful kid fun stuff, but it also takes me to the entire Leica universe with the production company Leica, who does Kubo and Box Trolls and those kind of things. And it just brings me into this world that just makes me happy.
That's cool.
And it's all done. It's photograph. It's been retouched, but it's a photograph, and I love that so much.
Yeah, I love that. So that specific thing, so John Oates, who is he's a brand designer, but he illustrated that. And so then I took that and I kind of ran with it. All right, if I was going to make this, obviously I did, what textures, how would I capture that texture on, using paper, or how would I create all that? So that's actually a mix of polymer clay and paper.
Super good.
Gotcha.
Okay, so can we take a step back and just say, where did papercraft come from? How do you go from photography to papercraft?
Interesting. So I used to do the photography for Super Team Deluxe, which is the brainchild of Raji King and Justin Mazzell. And, they have these, let people enjoy things. Exactly. And so when you're doing product photography, it's you kind of have to shrink it down to lapel size, because if that pen is so small, it's not like you can put it with a whole bunch of things.
Yeah.
And I always wanted to get into set design, but it's not like I have a huge warehouse and a copious amount of information about wood or gluing or saws or any of that. So I was well, I'll just make it small and I'll just do paper. And then Raji and Justin approached me. And then at that point I was all right, yeah, I'm in. And so at that point it just snowballed.
Nice. It's so good.
I want to go into the world of your papercraft. When I look at it, everything about it just takes me into this place, because it all has a playful sensibility to it, but at the same time, when you realize that it's a very real and tangible thing and not just renderings of things, it makes it your Creative South post that you did,
the campsite, the setup,
the campsite with the trees and the tent. That's the world. If I could choose a world to live in, it would be that.
It would be that, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can we talk about the studio hours piece? Because you posted a lot, if I remember correctly, you posted a lot of Instagram photos leading up to this shot of just process stuff. The way you have the light playing off the computer screen is so good. So maybe just talk a little bit about the practical setup of that shot to get it. Because I mean, I know you said you do a lot
wow.
of retouching, but it's really spot on light-wise.
Okay. There's 2 different studio hours that I shot.
The conceptual one.
Yeah.
Okay, so
on
is
the
this the
blue.
one that's a GIF, or is the one that with the blue?
The blue.
It's just
the blue with the red
wall
chair.
Yeah.
Okay, sweet, yeah. So I use, for my paper crafting, I use these small little LED lights. And that's pretty much just a composite image of 3 different, I think I did 3 different images there, where it's like I had one light kind of up top and then one light, did a little snoot, if you will. So I know Luke, I know you know what I'm talking about.
Snoot? I got nothing.
Yeah. So what a snoot is this little like funnel of a light kind of thing where it
focuses
narrows
your
down
light down to
the
it.
beam. It focuses, it focuses light. So therefore it's like I had one where it kind of reflected off of that. So it's a composite of a couple of different images in order to create it.
So good.
Do you guys want to see one of my, I have
Yes.
the flea because I throw these things
Yeah.
away.
Yes. Answer yes.
So I have the flea. Well, what are you going to do with a whole bunch of paper?
Send it
Just
to
send-
me. That seems like a really easy, obvious answer. Yeah, just
So the
just send it
flea
in my
is what
direction.
you're using. Well, I know that I've seen this.
That's with Ben
on,
Stafford.
Ben's, yeah, it's the artwork for a Manual Focus
Man.
episode.
That was fun.
Yeah, you
Wow.
can't really see it because the microphone is.
I wish our viewers could see this, the lit and finished version of it, because it's just blue paper, like layered.
Hey.
Oh, that's really good.
That's awesome.
And
Yeah.
I think, okay, so here's what I think, and I know we're spending a ton of time on the paper craft stuff, and we'll move into some of the other stuff, because this is not all you do. You do
Yeah,
so many
no.
other things.
You know what?
But-
I love paper stuff,
Okay.
so I'm down.
But I think what's different about your paper stuff that's intriguing to me is a lot of paper craft lives in the 2-dimensional world where it's just stacking layers and layers and layers. And that's great, and that's all well and good, and it gives a somewhat 3-dimensional or 2.5-dimensional effect, and that's great. Yours is not that. Yours lives in the 3-dimensional world. So you're actually sculpting with paper. It's not just
Yes.
cutting out paper and layering it and pasting it. These are full-on paper sculptures. So what made you decide
Exactly.
to
Well-
go that direction?
Because of the light. I mean, in order for the light to manipulate around it or to show form and depth, it has to be a 3D element, right? In order for those atmospheric things also to like flow around it. So it's all really because I have a love affair with light. That is why I love photography. I love light and I love manipulating it. I love telling it to do what I want it to do, and it does it,
You're like
So-
Zeus.
Oh man. I love it. I love light.
So let's. So the 2 pieces you just showed, the flea, and then also the girl. I don't know if you have a name for it, but
yeah.
both of
Oh,
those
that's fun.
pieces, the plug, yeah, both of those pieces I know have been the cover art for the last 2 episodes of Manual Focus. One with Emily Carlton, and we've talked to Emily Carlton before. She does all the sketching notes, which is really
Yeah.
cool. And then also Ben Stafford. We have a hot seat of Ben Stafford, a hot seat of Ben Stafford. floating around
It is a
somewhere,
hot seat. HAWT. A hot seat.
But both of those are part of Manual Focus. And in my understanding, so we talked a bit at this past year, this last Creative South, when you and I think talked for maybe about an hour, and you were kind of detailing Manual Focus. This is kind of a newer calling of yours. So maybe for people that don't know, kind of give the overview of what Manual Focus is. I think that's a good place to start, and then
Okay.
what that was birthed out of.
Okay, sweet. So Manual Focus is where I talk to a Christian creative and they share a lesson that God has taught them. So Emily Carlton has been on there. Ben Stafford has been on there. Matt D. Smith, he's going to be on there in June. And Dan Lee with Dan John Words, he's going to be on there in July. So it's a monthly podcast.
Okay. And so where did that come from? Because this is an idea that you've had for several years, but it's not an idea that you started acting on until recently.
Exactly. So That it was birthed out of Circles Conference 2015, which I think that happened in September, October. And I was really moved by Jeremy Cowart. I don't know if you guys know who he is. Luke, you probably know who Jeremy Cowart is. He's an amazing photographer.
Yes.
And he's just like this do-good philanthropist.
The help portrait.
Help portrait. Yep. Purpose Hotels. He's doing that right now. He just recently did a series of refugees and people who hate refugees and trying to like do a portrait of them together. Like he uses his art in such a reconciling way. Anyway, dude's amazing. So he spoke at Circles 2015, I believe. I think. Anyway, I remember I just cried when I met him. Like, hey, this is Alicia. And I'm like, I love you. And it was the most embarrassing thing ever. So anyway, And in there, it's like I had this idea of, or I had this like thing put on my heart, like start a podcast, and start one that where people who are of faith could share what's going on in their life or like whatever lessons being taught them, but who don't necessarily want to do it like over Twitter, right? Like,
Sure.
like that's not really a platform. I mean, it's not like of anything of any persuasion or anything, just that's not really the best place to put it. But anyway, but I didn't have the courage to do it. I wasn't bold. Like I wasn't, you know what I mean? Like I was afraid to be in the crosshairs because it's very controversial. And so I did start a podcast, but it was completely all about me. And it was about it was still called Manual Focus. So, and all those old episodes are still there. So if anybody's actually interested, it was like, what was the gear that I used? Or like, why Unsplash sucks. Sorry, people who like Unsplash. How I got into Stocksy and things like that. So anyway, I ended up getting convicted towards the end of, actually, I met you guys that April of 2016, and I ended up stopping it shortly after, just because it didn't align with the original vision. So it kind of sat dormant for 2 years until I relaunched it in March of this past year, 2018. So this year. Yeah. So yeah.
So let me ask you this. So there was a comment made before the episode, and in nothing negative, but you asked a question about having something that was overtly Christian on a creative platform. And so outside of this episode, so we've had conversations about that before, because there is a stigma that is attached to the idea of Christianity and to what I think you can pretty easily say is well, I won't say that because that could sound weird, but it just, there's this assumption that you're like not as good at your craft because maybe it's either tied to a religious thing like a church or an organization, or because you're a Christian, automatically you're kind of weird, or that's something I want to stay away from. Is that something that you feel compelled to answer to, or I should say it another way, how do you respond to that when you meet people, or is that kind of outside of the bounds of Manual Focus, and that's not something that you necessarily answer to?
I think it's one of those things where, and I'm sure that I'll still have that controversy, or I'll have those quote unquote haters eventually. But I have so many friends around me who aren't Christian, who still highly respect me. You know what I mean? They respect who I am. They respect what I believe. They don't, when I share about like, oh, I read this thing, or, oh, I have, I'm struggling and this is how I'm like dealing with it. And it's completely different than their worldview, or completely different than the way that they would approach it. I have not had backlash.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And pretty much what I've discovered is that actually where there are a lot of people who, probably, oh, you're a Christian and will shut you down. There's also a lot of people who aren't Christian who say, oh, you are Christian, I still love you, or I love you. You know what I mean? And and so anyway, I guess the thing that I thought that I was going to be discriminated against, like I'm not, sure. and we haven't. So,
well, that's good. I mean, that's
great.
The hope is that we can all play nicely with one another, right? That's the goal.
Yeah.
And but I think that's important. So, in reference to the reboot, so you've just rebooted Manual Focus. if you were to try to whittle it down into like a mission statement or a one-liner of what story you're trying to tell with this new version of Manual Focus, what would you tell people? What would the elevator pitch be for this, for what they can expect if they're coming into this new platform?
I think the overarching story is that God is enough and how he's enough for each and every one of us in our unique ways. I mean, and that's really it. I mean, it's like Emily talked about how like she really felt like God was telling her to stop her full-time gig and to go into freelance. And she was so scared to do it, but some circumstances had happened and she had to. And then therefore it was like she jumped which is why I did the little jumping girl.
Yeah.
And it's like she was caught. You know, Ben Stafford, like he has health issues upon health issues upon health issues upon health issues. It's amazing what the dude goes through, but you would never know it. You know what I mean? Because God is enough. And Matt, not to spoil his episode, but he talks about provision, and it's not just a financial provision, but it's more of a like, you know, he's had some pretty rough things happen in his life. And he goes really vulnerable and shares about that. And again, enough.
Yeah.
And it's this, we don't have to be a source of inspiration and a source of self-sufficiency.
Yeah.
We don't have to be.
Yeah.
Yeah. Does that theme, I'll say it that way, does that theme affect the tone of the show? Does the show have a very serious tone all the way through, or is it an ebb and flow with lightheartedness? And because you are a very bubbly, fun personality, does that come through in this new show, or is this a little bit more tame and more direct?
Yeah, I kind of allow. So this is really interesting in that. So in this podcast, you guys are leading me, right? You
Right.
are leading the conversation.
Sure. Yeah.
In my podcast, I send them a PDF and they have to agree to these things on this PDF before I even put them on the show. And one of the things is that this is interviewee led. So they're the one, I pretty much just set up the platform and let them roll with it. And then they have questions, or like I'll have questions and we'll ping off each other. But for the most part, they are the ones who are leading the show. And so therefore it's their personality is the one that's coming across. Every once in a while, we try to get lighthearted but for the most part, I mean, again, I've only done four,
Sure.
Yeah.
And what I've noticed is that people have absolutely no qualms being vulnerable and transparent, and sometimes it's really tough stuff. So it's not like they're going to laugh through it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to take us into our finals. Want to be cognizant of your time. Make sure this is bite-sized for everybody who's listening. And plus, we know we're going to talk to you again. So any other questions that we may have, you're just gonna have to wait, Patrick and Luke. All right. But I'll start us off. I'm going to jump back over to the paper craft. For somebody who is looking to get into this particular form of artistry, what would you say is the best? I'll just get real practical. What are the best tools and even the best paper types to achieve the effects that you are able to pull off?
Okay, that's a good question. So I really enjoy paper that doesn't have a texture to it. Early on in my Super Team Deluxe stuff, I ended up finding this like linen laid paper that had like this ridges to it, and it was horrible. So I like Recollections. It's a smooth cardstock. Again, you can find it all in the like scrapbooking section at like Michael's or Hobby Lobby or whatever. And I use a Cricut. So I don't know if a lot of people know what that is, but it's scrapbooking moms use it generally. So you can actually go into Illustrator, do anything in vector, export it as a SVG, and your Cricut will cut it for you. So at that point, it's just a whole bunch of trial and error to make sure that you have the templates right. But you don't have to hand cut all of the stuff, which is amazing.
Man.
Yeah.
You just opened up a whole new world. How much would someone need to invest, not necessarily just in the Cricut, but to get started into doing this, do you think?
If they ended up doing sans Cricut, I I would imagine $50 they need to be set up because you need a cutting mat, you need some glue. I love Allen's.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Allen's.
Anyway, there's a couple of different glues that I use for different things. I mean, I could probably do a podcast just on
This stuff.
adhesives. So yeah.
The tacky
Yeah,
glue.
that tacky glue.
And for
But
you
I
audio
have-
only listeners, you just felt it.
Yep. That was for you. I did it. I was trying to include everybody.
Yeah. So I have the clear and then I have the fast grab. So these are the
Nice.
two. Same brand, but different
Yeah.
like uses for each.
Okay. That's good.
I'm going to ask a question. This doesn't count as my final.
I'm going to ask a
What
question, and then I'm going to ask a question.
and then I have two more.
First question. Second question.
Would you say? Oh no! What do you say? Hold on. I want to see if Andrew spits this out. Oh, come on.
Soda
Swallow,
just came out of my
swallow.
nose. It just came out of my nose.
The eye thing's back.
Officially, Coke Zero came out of my nose. #, not sponsored.
Oh my goodness.
So anyway, back to my important to the question. Are you more of the when do you research this stuff? Guys, I'm so sorry. If you have to cut this, you have to cut it. It's not going to get cut. I don't even know why I ask.
No, it's good.
Do you tend to research this stuff very deeply? You made the comment you could do an entire episode about glue. And is that because you have to understand it deeply before you can decide? Or is it more of just grab junk off the shelf and it works and it looks good and next time I'll grab something else and see how it turns out?
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what it is. And I ended up buying $50 worth of double stick tape because I got different kinds and different sizes and all this stuff, realizing that later on it ended up being hem tape and didn't really work very well. But that just shows you how blind I am. I'm just all of it. Because that's the only way you find, you figure out what you like.
I think that's the key though. And this goes back into some of the photography stuff. You just try it. Just go and try it.
Yes.
You just have to find out what doesn't work before you know what does work sometimes.
Exactly. And that's one of the things where it's I work with two, I have two colleagues within my department and I am 10 years older than them. And it's one of those things where it's I've been doing this for 10 years. I've been a photographer for 10 years and I will still iterate on a lighting pattern before the before the subject shows up for an hour. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
There's no Ron Co. set it and forget it method when it comes to
because
this
light is
tactile
everywhere and everything reflects light. You can't.
Yeah.
There's no set it and forget it because a different room is a different light, even if it's the same setup.
You seem
Preach,
angry
Luke.
at light, Luke.
Huh?
Luke hates light.
No,
when you
it's-
punched the hole in the wall, was it about light?
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
I was just trying to
He was
get
trying to
one
punch
shot.
the light, and he realized that it was just a wall reflecting the
No,
light.
I think that's why it's a thing that is so hard to understand and to harness as a photographer is because it's so complex. It changes and it's different.
I love it.
Even with the same base ideas, it can be a different thing based on where you are.
Okay, so my question now is actually about it's a video you sent over pre-interview, and it's a TEDx talk by Carol Dweck, and it's based I imagine off of so I've watched the video, but I haven't read the book. The book is
It's okay.
New Psychology of Success, or it's called Mindset, and but she has a 15-minute talk. About the idea of believing that you can improve, and she gives an example. I believe it's of a school inside a district, and the difference it was made. So, and I know that you mentioned that this has been a really important concept or topic to you lately. So, do you mind unpacking a bit about that?
Yeah. Oh, for sure. So I'm a very self-aware person, I guess, you know what I mean? It's if there are things going on with me from an internal self-talk, it's I'm trying to figure out what is that thing, you know what I mean? So it's I'm really prideful today. Why am I prideful? Or I'm really judgmental, or I'm really scared to fail at this thing. You know what I mean? It's I try to pull at those threads and try to figure out what in the world is causing all of those. And for the most part, for the past, however many years, I've always thought that those were very individual things Very, very individual things. And it wasn't until I read this book that I realized that it was all kind of conjoined on this one thing. And what that one thing is a fixed mindset. So in the book, they talk about a fixed mindset and a growth mindset. And the fixed mindset pretty much says that you are born with a capacity of, it's a limited capacity of learning or creativity or social awareness or whatever. But like you are this thing. And yes, it can evolve a little bit. You know what I mean? It can kind of shape a little bit. But for the most part, this is you. This is you.
Okay.
Growth mindset is, no, I can learn, I can grow, I can get better. If I really suck at this thing, if I work hard, I can excel and I can be the professional that I want to be. What I realized is that, I grew up being told like, oh, you're smart. What ends up happening is that when parents say, oh, you're smart or oh, you're creative, it ends up creating the standard within the child that at that point, everything that they have to do either validates, it has to legitimize this claim. And if it doesn't, then that child ends up feeling that they are a failure. And so like I was just instilled over and over and over again, like, you are smart and you are creative. And then of course I see these things that it's like, no, I'm not though. You know what I mean? Like, I failed. I'm not.
Yeah.
Or like, I can't get this, like, why does it take an hour to figure out a lighting pattern? If I was smart, it wouldn't happen, blah, blah, blah. And one of the things about a fixed mindset is that like, because you always have to legitimize it, if you end up doing really great at something, then you end up getting prideful. You end up, like having that superior mindset and judgmental. But then at the same time, you're also really afraid to fail because if you fail, then at that point it's saying, no, you're not that. So after reading this book, I was able to kind of pinpoint that was the falseness that I was like living under. And then at that juncture, I like swayed my self-talk to be like, this is a growing opportunity. Because what would happen is that there's this one paper craft, it's an iceberg, and it's a horrible one, and I don't love it whatsoever, but it took 20 hours to create, and it shouldn't have, but because I suck at math, it took 20 hours. And I literally cried during it, because I was like, I stopped at one juncture going like, am I worth this? Like, am I good enough? Like, why am I pursuing this paper illustration if I can't even make an iceberg? And golly gee willikers, I finished the dang thing. And it was a success, and it wasn't a success because it looked awesome. It was a success because I made it through. But that's an idea of like, I'm midway through and I think that I suck and I'm horrible and I shouldn't be this paper illustrator. And it would be so crippling. I can't even describe how crippling it would be. But now, since I've read the book and I understand this whole growth mindset thing, now I'm like, I'm just learning. I'm learning. And I've been able to tackle things and pivot ideas and enter into a shoot without the level of anxiety. Because it's like every single time that I would go into a shoot, I would think that I would fail. Like, this is the one that I'm going to forget everything.
Yeah.
You know? So, yeah.
I like there's a line in the preface, and I'll paraphrase, but to the talk, it says something along the lines of, is the issue that you can't, or is the issue that you haven't? And being able to like make that separation. I think that's really cool. And I think to be able to spin it that way is a very important and healthy thing. So, Luke, I think that leaves you.
Yeah. Okay. So, man, there's so many different sides to Alicia, so it's hard to nail down which question to ask.
4 or 5, probably.
Okay.
There's like
if you, it's hard to figure out the right question because there's so many things I want to know. If you were able to go back to the start of your career in photography, and somebody was going to say, if you go back to that person and say, here's the main thing to focus on. Like if you wanted to get in all of my experience, here's what I've learned. Focus on this, and it'll save you a lot of time down the road. What's that one thing maybe that you've learned in your journey of photography and being a paper illustrator and creative that could maybe help that person back where you started?
It would not be anything technical whatsoever. It would probably go back to that self-talk. So I don't even know. Can I pull up my Twitter really quick?
Yeah.
Because I have an
do it.
amazing.
Yeah.
If your identity rests in what you do, then your anxiety, stress, depression level will fluctuate with how well you think you're doing it. That would be the thing that I would tell myself early on, because I mean, I have been in this creative industry since 2004.
Yeah.
And I have always, the summation of my worth is always built around how well I create.
Right.
And so being able to divorce those two and say, no, that's not it. And if I could have gotten that earlier, I feel like I would. Because I mean, there's so many things, even last year, that I said no to because I was scared. Like I had somebody, anyway, I don't want to go through all because I'll take a depression nap after this. But but it's like I've just said no because I was scared that I would fail, or I was scared that I was going to make a fool of myself. So
No, that's
Did you
great.
say?
that.
So that's really surprising to me because, and I say this in the most respectful, loving way possible. You seem very willing to make a fool of yourself in social situations. Like you seem like you'd be the first person to jump on a couch or to like jump like karaoke or something like that.
To
So it's-
gargoyle, one might say.
to go, whatever that phrase could mean, it seems like you would do that. So it's funny to hear you say that is actually a concern of yours, because I would not have assumed that just based on our limited interaction.
Wow. Well, I appreciate that. But I think generally, so one of the things that Luke probably can resonate with this is that as a photographer, if you look like an ass, like if you look dumb, then at that point, the person that you are shooting will also feel comfortable to do something that that doesn't feel natural, but looks good in camera. And so that's one of the things that I have
Like,
that has
stick your
carried
neck
over
out.
from my photography.
Like stick your neck out.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's like I act a fool in those social situations. So at that point, they're like, well, if that's the standard, then I'm doing great.
Yeah.
Right, then I'm good. And that's to pull this thing full circle before we close this thing out. That's exactly what you do in social settings, even if there's not a camera in your hand.
Yeah.
That's what you did for us when we first met you, and what you did to embrace us and
Make us feel comfortable.
and to pull us into this new thing for us, which was the conference world, which now we're very well versed in. But you were the first person to help crack that egg, so it's that exact idea. So tell everybody where they can find your work, where they can follow you, they can support you, they can give you money,
They can
whatever it
listen to the
is. Tell them
podcast.
how they can find you. Yeah.
Awesome. Cool. Well, I won't take anybody's money, so that's good. But they can find me at Alicia Cologne on Instagram and Dribble and Twitter and AliciaCologne.com.
Okay, and she won't take any of your money, which is awesome. She is a giver of money, though. She is one of our newest patrons supporting the show.
Yeah,
So
thanks.
not only supporting the show emotionally and socially, but also financially. So thank you so much for doing
welcome.
that. Would you mind helping us decide what our categories are next week for our master categories?
I would love to, but can we change what they would be?
We absolutely can. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to pause on that, and we'll come right back after this because it's going to be time to draw some tokens. So the tokens portion every week is when we get to find out exactly the categories we have for the following week. We pick our topics based on those categories. Alicia, you said you have a little bit of a different idea. Let's hear what it is.
Yeah. So right now what we do is that we have toys and games, right? We have design.
Art and design,
Yep.
yes. And TV
Yeah,
and
we
film.
have and TV and film. I feel like we could branch out. I feel like you guys have been doing that so much. I feel like we could probably do something like music,
Okay.
you know?
Like
It
there's
looks like we
music.
planned this, but it's not.
Yeah.
Okay, what's
Okay.
another one?
Amusement parks.
Okay.
I
That
like a we don't have one. We'll do okay. That's a good one.
calculated
Fedora.
randomness is what will be that one.
Okay. And interior design.
Ooh.
So for that one,
Well,
we
put
will
art
do
and design back in, and that's what we'll
we'll
use
know
that
that
for.
be-
yeah. Okay.
Okay.
All right,
Interior
sorry,
design.
guys.
Specifically interior design.
Okay,
Interior.
Yes.
So just to recap before we pull these things, interior, nope. Music,
Yes.
Yes.
amusement parks, and interior design.
I love it.
All right.
I'm
Okay,
super
I like where we're going with this.
I want actually. Let me just say this: amusement parks would be the absolute worst category for me to get because I
True.
can't
So-
even go to them because I can't fit
stop.
on any
Save
of them.
that for the episode when you get it.
Because
I'm
you're
not gonna get it, so I
inevitably
don't
going to
need to
get
save
it. That's
this.
why.
We'll
'cause
save
you
it
know
for the
you're gonna get
episode
what
when
don't
you
want.
talk about it when one of us has it.
Yeah. Okay, here we go. I'm shuffling them up. They're going to be on my desk. I can't see what they are. You give me a number between 1 and 3. You'll be picking 4. Patrick, get him out of the way.
2.
You have interior design.
Yes. I mean, that's my specialty.
That is your
Dude, I'm so
specialty.
excited.
You don't get a room looking like this without some
Having someone else do it
Without
for
a
you.
wife.
All right, pick between 1 and 2, and you'll be picking for me.
1.
I get music. That means Luke. You
Amusement
are
parks.
Amusement parks.
Listen, here's
That's awesome.
This is the best part. I live close to America's roller coast, Cedar Point.
Save it for the podcast, Luke.
Yeah,
All
get
right,
your
saving
act
it.
together.
Saving it.
Oh man. I'm on pins and needles. On pins and needles over there.
Depends
On
and needles.
depends and needles.
That's fine.
I wouldn't.
The depends are to protect against the needles.
I see. You don't want needles in the depends though. 'cause
No.
That is a hot
I
mess.
wasn't talking about
That's Saw 7.
diapers.
Oh my goodness. Okay, Alicia.
Did you just whisper diapers?
What?
Like it's diapers. You whispered it.
Okay.
So I don't know where we were at now. What are we
Bye.
talking about? Oh,
It's
this
the
is the
sign off.
this is
It's
the
like the
goodbye
end,
time.
yeah.
I see. All right. You can find Alicia at all those places. Follow her anytime you are in the same zip code. Make sure you connect with her. She's so fun. Thank you so much for chatting with us. You can find us if you're watching this on YouTube. Just see all the links to all this stuff right below us. You can hit us up on mofonepodcast.com where you can find show notes and links as well as a ton of other incredible guests. This is episode 301. We've been doing this a hot minute, and there are so many talented.
Arguably too long.
Yeah, you're not wrong. This is our last episode, everybody. But you can find so many talented people in our archive. Go to mofonepodcast.com/archive. If you want to support the show financially, like Alicia just did, you can go
Cha-ching.
to patreon.com/mofonepodcast. That helps us out so much. You can support us even non-financially by going to iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, Google Play, Spotify, iHeartRadio, listening, subscribing, rating, reviewing. That stuff doesn't cost any money, takes very little time, but it helps us out so much. Give us a like, give us a share, give us a follow, whatever it is. You can find us on all the different platforms at M of One Podcast. And as well, we are now part of the new Timed Edition. So you can go to timededition.com and check out a whole bunch of really cool people, and then we're also there.
And then us, yeah.
We're there too, contributing to the stuff that we all love and we like to talk about. So new content daily over at Timed Edition. You can check all that stuff out there. I think that's everything right now. You can go to the shop, go to shop.mofonepodcast.com. You can get shirts and hats and mugs and fun stuff like that. Patrick just looked to see if he was wearing a hat. I want you, if you're watching this on YouTube, go back and watch Patrick look up to see if he's wearing a hat, because
Hey,
that's
here's
gonna
a
be
hat, though.
That's going to be my favorite part of the show, I think, is just seeing Patrick check to see if he's wearing a hat. Okay. Nope. All right, here we go. But here's the deal. Just connect with us. You can find us at mofonepodcast.com/family to be part of the Discord channel. Alicia's there too. So,
Yeah.
honestly, there's no reason to not chat with us because we're everywhere. That's really what it comes down to. If you want to connect with us, there's a way to do it. Just search M of One Podcast and we'll be there. But I think for now we're gonna get out of this episode. Anybody have any qualms with that?
Do it.
No, let's do. We ready?
Here we
ready.
go. I'm Andrew.
I'm Patrick.
I'm Luke.
I'm Alicia.
Peace out.
Bye.
Hold on to your butts.
Tightly.